Well, hey everybody, welcome to Church Tech Life. My name is Michael and this is Phil. This is a video for tech guys by tech guys. We have a really neat episode for you guys where we're going to be talking about our drum enclosures and how they're set up. But first I want to introduce you to my friend Phil. Hey Phil, what's going on?
Not a whole lot. How are you doing today?
I'm good. We are both just wiped. We had a busy weekend, personally and professionally, and so if you see us falling asleep or nodding off, it's not you, it's each other.
It's us. That sounds like something you told to a girl in 12th or in middle school. It's not you, it's me.
You are assuming I dated anyone in school. I'm lucky I'm married, man. All right, we like to start every episode with a Bible verse. Phil, hit us with it. What do we have?
We're going to read Proverbs 22 because anytime you go looking for wisdom, you always go to Proverbs. So Proverbs 22, verse 4, the reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. What a great promise from God.
Yeah, and yes. You're right. Uh-huh. See, I told you retired.
So, Michael, what are we talking about today?
All right, so I filmed our drum enclosure as promised last month. I promised you guys we would walk through my drum enclosure in depth, and I finally filmed it, and here we are. So I walked through my drum enclosure, which is the little room we have our drums in, all the microphones, and how we have them all set up. So I'm excited to show you guys. Let's go. All right, let's talk about the drum enclosure. I wanted a modern, sleek-looking drum enclosure compared to something big and boxy, and so we went with the Total Drum Cage 8080. What's nice is it has a seamless polycarbonate front, and so it's like a big curved window that looks like glass, but it's polycarbonate. It has a big 8-foot by 8-foot footprint, so you can fit your entire kit, but also a rack for all the equipment, and tons of room for moving around in there. Also, I'm about 6 foot, and I can stand up inside, so that's really nice. It's got some cool features like a rolling riser, so you can move it around the stage if you need to. It's got fans to circulate air inside, as well as lots of acoustic foam. We don't want any reflections, especially from the cymbals and from the hi-hat or from the snare, bouncing around in there. We want that to stop, and so having a lot of acoustic treatment was a must for me. All right, let's talk about microphones. You'll kind of see a common theme here where I wanted to get some high-end mics that I really didn't have to process all that much. I didn't want to buy inexpensive mics and then have to EQ them and compress them a ton just to get the sound I want. I want the sound of our drums to naturally come through. Also, because I'm not sampling any of the drums, I want the sounds coming from the drum into the microphone to be as good as possible. So I went with some really high-end mics here. For the kick drum, I went with the Earthworks DM6. It's a brand new condenser mic from Earthworks, and I'm really a fan of it. It sounds really nice right out of the box with minimal EQ and minimal processing, and it just makes our kick drum sound as good as it possibly can be. For the snare drum, I've got 2 mics on it, one on top to actually get the batter head, and then one on the bottom for the snare side. I tried a Shure SM57 on the top, just like everybody does, and it sounded good, but I really wasn't getting the sound I was looking for. So I swapped it out for a Beyerdynamic M201 I had lying around, and it just sounds great. I don't have hardly any cymbal bleed from the hi-hat or the toms, and it really makes the drum shine. It really sounds really good. In my opinion, the most important microphones on your drum set are your kick drum mic, your snare mics, and then your overheads. And so we really spent some extra money in these areas just to make sure these 3 things sound really good. On the bottom mic, we have a Sennheiser MD441U Supercardioid mic. I like this mic because it's got a really tight pickup pattern, so I only get the snares, and then it sounds really nice, and so I don't have to doctor it all that much to get the sound I'm looking for. Well, because I spent a lot of money already, I had to save some money on the toms. I felt that we could get a darn good sound without spending a lot of money in this area. So we went with the Sennheiser E904 dynamic mics. They clip right onto the rim, and it just makes a really clean look, and they sound just fine. We've got 4 toms total, 2 rack toms, and then 2 floor toms. Well, very soon after I set everything up, I realized I needed a dedicated hi-hat mic, but I didn't want something massive or another stand in there, and so I put a Shure KSM 137 on an arm that actually hooks on the hi-hat stand, and that just picks up only the hi-hat, and I can blend that in, and it sounds really nice. Arguably, the 2 most important microphones on your drum set are the overheads because they pick up your entire kit. So I spent a little extra money on these, and I got the AKG C414 XL2s. and they just sound great on literally everything you put them on with minimal processing, and that's exactly what I wanted. What's really cool about the Total Drum Cage 8080 is that it comes with an accessory bar right over the drummer's head that you can mount lights and microphones to. And these two overhead mics just sit nicely right overhead, and they're out of the way. You don't have to set up any extra stands, and they sound great right there. Well, we run everything through Dante here at the church, and I needed all of these microphones to get into the Dante network. So I set up a little rack about 12U high with a DT168 from Allen and Heath inside. It's got 16 inputs and 8 outputs, and I could run all 10 of those microphones right into the DT168 and pull them up anywhere on the Dante network, including front of house in the tech booth and in the studio where we record things, as well as our live stream suite. So because our drummer is in an enclosure all by himself, segregated from the rest of the world, he needs a way to hear the rest of the room and also other musicians and other singers on the stage. So we gave him an Allen and Heath ME-1. It's very much like a fancy Avion unit of old where you can pick up any channel in the Dante network and you can turn it up and down depending on how he wants it mixed. He typically has a lot of the click, which is the metronome, a lot of the worship leader, the pianist, bass, and then all of his microphones summed up in a group. Well, our drummer has the hard job of also running the Ableton suite during our Sunday services. This runs all of our metronomes, but also stems and multi-tracks that we purchase or make, and he fires them off from a computer inside the enclosure. He's got a mouse pad right to his right next to the floor tom, and also a monitor as well as a keyboard to his left where he can track the timeline of all the stems and also adjust things if he needs to. I can also remote into this computer from front of house or back in our production control room to adjust levels and also to fire it off remotely if I need to. Right by his keyboard, he has an Elgato Stream Deck. These things are really handy for triggering things in Ableton, but also in Pro Presenter and firing off Midi commands if you need them. Well, in Ableton, he needs a way to turn on his metronome, mute and unmute stems, as well as start and stop the tracks, depending on what he's doing, but he can't reach over and push play or move a mouse while he's playing. And so he has an Alesis Sample Pad Pro that he hits with his drumstick. So he doesn't have to put his drumstick down, reach over, push play, pick up his drumstick again. He can go over, hit play on the sample pad, and that triggers everything in Ableton. We have some really talented IT guys on staff that put the Ableton computer in a 2U rack chassis, so that way this computer can sit inside the Ableton rack with the DT168. It's pretty neat. Since our drummer is stuck inside an enclosure and no one can hear him when he speaks, he needs to wear a headset from Shure that he can speak into, and so everybody in the room can hear him during rehearsal if he needs to communicate things or need to talk to our worship leaders. The catch is if that was unmuted at all times, it would just sound awful because the drums are really loud. So we put down a Rolls Mic Mute MM11 Pro right by the hi-hat stand. This is really cool. When he holds down the button, that unmutes the mic and he can talk, and as soon as he lets go with his foot, then suddenly that mic mutes, and so we don't have to worry about muting it and unmuting it during rehearsal. He controls that himself. Well, our lighting guys have a really cool job of making the lights inside the worship center match the emotion and feel of the song, and a lot of times they do that through color. So if our worship backgrounds are blue and purple, they make the lights in the room match blue and purple. Well, we wanted to have the lights inside the drum enclosure also be able to be changed with the lighting board, blue and purple in this case, or if everything's red, then I want the drums to turn red. So I put some Elation 6-par 100s in there. There's 3 of them, 2 on top and 1 on bottom facing up toward the cymbals, and it just completes the look. It makes it look really cool, really modern, and when everything else inside the room changes color, the drums change too. And to top it all off, our video guys wanted to have a dedicated shot for the drums, and so we put a Panasonic PTZ in there that's small, it hangs from the ceiling, and all the cables run up through the drum enclosure into that camera, so we have a dedicated drum shot.
So, interesting. So, it looks like you and I have very similar drum cages, or drum boots. I call it a cage. So, because I feel like I'm in a cage every time I play drums. So, but we have very similar ones, but ours are different in the fact that mine has a lot of echo and yours does not. But before I get to that, I'm curious, how long did it take you to actually put that cage together?
It only took 2 days to put together, and that was mostly because we put the enclosure up, and then we set another day to put the drums and cabling and microphones in.
Cool. All right, so did it come freight, or did the postman just put it in your mailbox?
So it came freight. It was over 1,000 pounds in a massive crate, and it was delivered to our loading dock, and it was a monster. But I got a lot of free plywood, so that's good.
It's always good. All right, acoustic treatment. Did that come with your drum booth, or did you need to buy it and all that good stuff?
Both. Total Drum Cage has a lot of cool accessories that you can add on. They have a base model of the 8080, which is the size and then the shape of it. And then you can purchase a lot of extra features like the air circulation system. The rolling riser was an added accessory, and also all of the acoustic padding inside was an accessory. And it worked really well, except that there's a space an air gap between the rolling riser, the casters, and the floor. And so whenever he hits the kick drum, boom, 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 or hit the floor tom, that sound leaks under the riser and pops out, and you can actually hear it. It's really loud, louder than actually it should be. And so I think if we didn't have the rolling riser, it wouldn't be a problem because there wouldn't be a gap. However, with the roller riser, it didn't touch the low end. A lot of that was coming out. So we had to shove a ton of foam underneath it to absorb that and wrap it in blankets on the bottom edge. You actually, if you look at that wide shot, and I'll put a screenshot up right now, you'll see the bottom is actually wrapped in furniture blankets, black ones, just to stop that low end. Once we did that, it was totally fine. But does that answer your question? That was kind of all over the place. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So the fan, see, we've got a fan on ours as well. And I was a little bit concerned whenever I first got to the church that fan was going to be too noisy. For us, it has not been. It's been okay. Have you noticed that the recirculation fan is noisy for y'all? Are y'all able to overcome that? Because it does make noise. Like when I was in there today and I walked into the worship center and I was like, oh, somebody left the fan on. So it's loud enough when nothing's going on. I could hear it. But whenever we've got service going on, the noise is kind of covered up by just, the noise coming from the stage. Is that y'all's same experience, or have y'all had to do anything to overcome fan noise?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So when everything is off and the drum fan is the only thing on, you hear a. However, once everybody starts singing and playing, then you can't even hear it. Now, what we did learn, the drummer is doing physical activity in there. He's banging, he's slapping, he's booming around. And so even though there's air moving inside the enclosure, it gets hot. So what we'll probably do is run a duct with a portable air conditioner in a closet or off-site, so that way he gets more air, because it's just not enough. Only because, a guitarist, he's doing this, bass, she's doing this, and drummer's doing this. He needs a lot more air, so that way he doesn't cook inside the enclosure.
Man, if I could get an air conditioner inside of mine, that would be great.
I will come out there for $17,000 and install it for you.
All right, checks in the mail. Do you recommend doing treating? If somebody bought this same cage, would you recommend doing acoustic treatment, or would you just leave it off and say save your money and do something else?
I would 200% encourage acoustic treatment. We saw in yours, where there's limited treatment, how much the high frequencies bounce around the room and just how awful that is. Okay, I want to clarify something real quick. So the polycarbonate shield goes all the way across the front, right? Well, the sides, if you look at them, they're solid. They are solid plywood that's carpeted and have acoustic treatment on them. So there's no noise bouncing sideways this way. And then there's acoustic treatment all the way across the ceiling, the pyramid acoustic foam. So there's minimal noise bouncing this way. So the only reflections are happening off this front glass. That's exactly what you want. You want the least amount of surfaces for your sound to bounce off of, the better, right? You want it mostly absorbed. So the extra acoustic foam was by far worth it, and then everything else we did to add underneath it was icing on the cake.
Yeah, after seeing your video, I really am thinking about picking up some acoustic treatment inside of mine and getting it in there, especially getting that triangle foam just up on the ceiling, if nothing else.
What's really cool is the acoustic foam. So on top, it's just carpeted plywood, and the acoustic foam comes with Velcro on the back that just sticks hook and loop up to the ceiling, so there's no weird screwing or stapling. It just Velcros to the top, and it's solid. It doesn't fall down at all.
So your microphones, interesting mic choice. Everybody does like 57s or, you're doing the 906s. I've got excuse me, you're not doing 906s, you're doing 904s. I've got the 604s. I really like the 604s. I've used them for a long time. What do you think about the 904s?
They're fine. The hard thing about spending money on the other microphones, on the snare, kick, and overheads, is that you hear the quality difference between all those high-end mics and then the 904s. Thankfully, though, in the type of worship we play, we do a lot of cymbals, do a lot of kick, and a lot of snare, and so there's not a lot of toms, so it was okay. Was it overkill? I think the snare bottom was probably overkill. I think you probably could have gotten a great sound with any other mic, dynamic mic or condenser of your choice. I think the kick mic was probably worth it, only because it was only $400. The overheads, while darn expensive, were definitely worth every penny. It was one of those mics where I was struggling with the toms. I'm like, I was struggling with the snare top until I swapped it out. I was discouraged. Put the overheads up. I'm like, oh, there we go, and put a high pass filter on it, little compression. That was it. I'm like, this is great. So it was actually a relief, like putting up some nice mics and just saying, oh, there we go, sounds amazing. So while expensive, it was totally worth it. And honestly, we could get away, if we had to, with 2 overheads and a kick mic and be totally fine.
So your kick mic is an Earthworks, right?
Yeah.
What were your overheads again?
They were AKG C4142s XL.
Excellent. Yeah, I remember like a long time ago when Earthworks first came out, they had a little filter that you'd put on a microphone and throw that inside of your kick, whatever mic you were using. You know, most people were using the Shure 52s. And then they had 2 overhead mics that they put. And that's how people mic'd kits from those Earthworks microphones. That was the original package, which was pretty interesting. And then people started putting 57s on the snare drum. And that was basically all people were running for a little bit of time with those Earthworks. Michael and I are both fans of the Earthworks microphones. I really like them. Earthworks has done a great job on things. So if you're looking for microphones and something that you'll be happy with, go ahead and check those out. You almost can't go wrong with the majority of their product line.
No, we I use heavily the Flex One series on our choir. I know this isn't related to drums, but we're going to talk about it anyway. I use the Flex One on our choir, 4 of them.
So do I.
Yeah, okay. So they sound great. That's 2 guys saying they sound amazing. Their capsules for the Shure transmitters we have sound great. And I've got one on a violin player. It just sounds great. So I haven't had a problem ever with one of them. We have I have an old, it's a KK105. It's the handheld condenser. Sounds great. It's like from the 90s, I think. And it sounds awesome. Sounds better than most of the mics I have in the cabinet.
That's cool. Yeah, I had a school call me, and they were doing a choir performance with their for the school, and they called. They were like, "We don't have any condensers. Can you help us out?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I took those Flex Ones down there, and they were like, "We want a price on this because they're calling the band boosters together so they can get them for their choir." So they were that impressed with them. So I don't sell them. We don't sell any of the products we're talking about. We always say that we don't have any affiliation with this stuff. So. This is totally our real opinions on things. Nobody's given us any money. They haven't even bought us a Coke, coffee, nothing.
Not yet.
So, so this is all our own opinions that's unsolicited and unpaid for. So, let's see. Typical. We've talked about an untypical snare drum mics. What would a normal? So if somebody's out there and they're like, okay, so that's untypical. What? If you were just saying, all right, I'm just gonna throw a mic kit on my drums, what would you throw on there that you're just looking for basic stuff?
Well, so number one, a lot of people just use one microphone on their snare, and that's an SM57 from Shure on the top, and call it a day. It's a studio technique to mic both the top and the bottom, because when you hit the head with your drumstick, it sounds different than the bottom of the snare, and so they mic both, and you blend them together. So, what would you use on the bottom typically, Phil? What would you typically put on the bottom?
So, most of the time I would use a 57, but whenever we were doing a lot of our production tour stuff, we honestly used a 604, just because we could clamp it and get rid of an extra mic stand.
I would see that as well. Most of the time, outside the studio, I really didn't see anybody mic the bottom. Because we have the luxury of being in an enclosure separated from the rest of the room, I don't have to worry about brass. I have trombones and trumpets in the orchestra pit. I don't have to worry about their noise getting into the drum mics. I don't have to worry about the choir or loud guitar amps or anything leaking into these mics. They're all by themselves because the drum enclosure is its own little room. So I treated it like a studio. I said, okay, let's buy some studio level mics to put in there because I have the luxury of it being all by itself. So that's why I went that route. And you typically don't see that Sennheiser that I put on the bottom. You don't see that in live environments like ever. Like number one, cost, but also it's just not practical. It's big and heavy and kind of ugly looking, but it sounds great.
Yeah, once you find something that works, just kind of roll with it. But yeah, if you're just out there and you're trying to figure it out, Beta 52, SM52 for the kick, SM57 for your snare drum. You can just use, like Michael said, just one on the top. There's a couple of other mic techniques. If you want some ideas, some suggestions, put it in the comments, and I'd love to kind of talk my way through some other things you can do on a snare drum. And then you can run 57s on your toms as well. I'm a big fan of the 604s, their Sennheiser. The reason I like the 604 over the 904s, Michael's got the 904s, I've got the 604s. I really like the Sennheiser microphones. I like the 600 series better than the 900 series, but that's just my opinion.
One of the things that we discovered with our kick mic was it actually sounded better almost halfway into the drum, closer to actually where the pedal is, where the batter is, compared to on the resonant head, or like sticking right by the porthole. The porthole, so on a bass drum, you have your big old head, the face, right, that actually faces toward the audience. And a lot of times I have a little hole, right, at the bottom or on the corner, right? We found that sticking the microphone actually inside the drum on an arm, so here's the head, inside the drum, about halfway, works best for our situation. That changes with the type of drum you've got, the material it's made out of, how deep it actually is. And also depends on your drummer too. But in our situation, it works better that way.
I'll tell you, one of the best ways to get a great kick sound is to trigger it. Sorry, I had to throw that one out.
And that's fair. I mean, so honestly, the world is going, because triggering is becoming so easy and it's dead reliable and it sounds great, the world is going toward a triggered sound. And so we had that option of saying, okay, do we really want to spend this money on a DW kit with all these nice mics and having to deal with tuning heads and all this stuff? And we said, yeah, because we've got the staff for it and we've got the knowledge and expertise to accomplish a good sound. But honestly, it would have been simpler to say, just buy a normal run-of-the-mill kit, put triggers on it, figure out how to use them, and download a really good pack from, I don't know, Steven Slate. Is that what you use, Steven Slate?
Yeah, I like Steven Slate. There's a few others out there as well, but Steven Slate seems to be kind of the best of the best out there for right now.
I mean, and so the thought is that you just do that and you get a great sound, and I don't dispute that at all. The catch is that we have our buddy, my friend Gavin, is the drummer, and he is almost pro level, and so he knows how to play it, and he plays every Sunday, and so we have the luxury of having someone very talented behind the kit, but then also engineers who can make it sound as good as it can be, as good, if not better, than a Steven Slate trigger. So that's why we went that route. If your volunteers or even staff drummers aren't good enough, or the situation that you're in isn't conducive for that, then yeah, I'd say by all means trigger it, because it is simple and it is reliable now. It wasn't reliable 20 years ago, but it is now. So might as well go for it.
Yeah, and for us, it was consistency. You would have one drummer that bangs real hard and one drummer that barely hits, and we were looking for something consistent. And then the drum that we had was real small, Still is, and it hadn't changed. So the kick drum that we had down there was real small, and I couldn't get the tonality out of it that I was looking for. Kind of a bigger, fatter hit. It just came out a little bit thin. So we were able to manipulate that sound through just going through the Roland. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm spoiled. I have the same drummer every week.
Yeah.
I've got a good kit with good microphones and good sound guys. And all that together makes a great sound. If you're lacking in any of those areas, your sound is going to suffer. So that's when triggering might make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're miking source, the source has to sound good.
Yes.
Otherwise, the outcome of that does not sound good. So yeah. So your overheads, what's your polarity pattern on those?
Right now, one of them is flipped 180 degrees, out of phase with the other. And then on the... and then everything else is matching, just stock, not flipped. Does that make sense?
Yes. And that's also a good point on the snare drum. Did you flip polarity on your snare as well?
I had to. So I flipped the polarity on the bottom snare side. So it was, this is a great test to see if you're out in phase or not, right? The drummer's playing, boom, boom, boom on the snare, sounds good. On one mic, I bring in the other one, and it sounds really thin and kind of odd. I'm like, that's weird. I wonder what's going on here. So I flipped the phase on the bottom mic, and it suddenly came to life. And you're like, oh, there we go. So it was out of phase, out of the box, because they're both out of phase with each other. So I flipped it, it's in phase, and life is good.
Yeah. So the louder you push that snare, or both of those mics, the quieter it gets. That's a pretty good indication that you need to flip polarity on one of them. So what is the microphone pattern on your overheads? Is it cardioid, omni?
So they are selectable. They've got a couple selectable patterns on it, and I have it in the cardioid setting only because they're almost flat against the ceiling. And so they're picking up everything beneath it, and then there's nothing above it where the acoustic foam is that I want to get. So they're just cardioid straight down.
So Gavin's using a Stream Deck over there as well. Has that been good? What do you have the Stream Deck programmed as, and is he able to hit buttons on the Stream Deck while he's playing? I mean, how does all of that work?
So I'll cover two things here. The Stream Deck mirrors what our iMag operator sees on her Stream Deck. So iMag is the person who's responsible for lyrics on screen, also for iMag, image magnification, the cameras on the screens in the worship center, right? And so they have a couple selectable buttons. They're switching between the live feed from the cameras, from the production control room that shows what's on the cameras, the Mac feed, which is the feed for full screen graphics and lyrics, and then also things like lower thirds and chroma keys and luminance keys, that kind of thing. And they have all those options on a Stream Deck by their computer. Gavin has those exact same options on his Stream Deck as well. That way, if he sees that something's wrong, if something's out of whack, or something happens, he's able to reach over and grab that. The reason being is he is one of my techs who knows how the system works, and so I trust him to be able to make those decisions if he needs to. Another set of buttons we have on that Stream Deck as well are triggers for countdowns. Most of our stuff is automated, so like 3 minutes before service, it's automatically going to trigger a 3-minute countdown on the screens. Let's pretend that doesn't happen for whatever reason. He can trigger it because he's already on stage. He has all of the recording buttons as well. So for instance, we have it set up so that way whenever our HyperDecks, our Blackmagic HyperDecks, are recording audio, video, and graphics, the buttons turn red, just like a recording device would. So he's able to see, oh, they're recording just fine, we're good. Whereas if it's not recording, he can push that button and it records. It's literally just a failsafe, and since he's sitting there, playing the drums, he can look over and make sure it's working. So he has a little bit of a unique situation where not all your drummers are going to be responsible for making sure it gets recorded, right? So in your situation, it may not make sense. Now, what he does need for drumming is, like I said, he has that Ableton suite right to his left, so he can see his stems and his metronome and vocal cues, that kind of thing. And he starts and stops all of that, not with the Stream Deck, but with the sample pad. So the kind of things that he does trigger is he has an on-off toggle, one of the buttons on the Stream Deck. He hits it on and off to turn on and off the metronome. He has a jump to measure 1 button, so that way if we need to start a song over, or if for whatever reason when he loads up the song, it doesn't start on measure 1, he can jump to measure 1. He's got one that says jump to bridge, jump to chorus, jump to verse 1, and so he can, if we get off for whatever reason, or if we need to repeat a section, he can do that. He has a jump to next marker, or fall back to last marker. He has those as well. He's got, what are some other options? Oh, he's got a solo drum part just for his ears. And so that way, if he's unsure of a drum section, he can push a button and it solos just to his ears so he can hear the drum section, the drum stem. I'm pretty sure that's it.
Excellent. Yeah, Gavin is phenomenal on programming the Stream Decks. He's done all kinds of great stuff, and one day we'll walk down some more stuff that he's done for your video suite and everything else on that.
He uses Companion mostly to trigger all of that stuff and program it. He really doesn't use almost any of the Stream Deck software that comes with it. He uses another program called Companion that he makes buttons on the Stream Deck.
So you're saying Companion is his friend?
Companion is his companion.
So I hate to call you out on this, but I think you made a mistake. You've got a 2-rack U computer in there?
Yeah, I'm an idiot. I said to you in the video. It's not to you. It's for you. And I'm an idiot. That thing is beefy, man. So it's really cool. It's from a company called SilverStone, and it makes custom enclosures. And this one's not custom. You can just buy it off the shelf. And it's a PC case that has rack ears on it. And it's got all of the, I'm not a PC builder, that's Gavin's gig, he loves that kind of stuff. But it's got all the connections and all the places to mount the graphics card and power supply and everything you need for PCIe cards to build your PC, but in a rack mount chassis. It's really neat.
Yeah, Gavin builds his own keyboards too, doesn't he?
I'll kind of tell you what kind of guy he is. Last Christmas, I bought him ceramic keycaps for Christmas. And he was just ecstatic. So that tells you how nerdy we are. But so yeah, he built his own he has like 15 keyboards. He's young and has no kids and a great paying job, and so yeah, he spends his money on keycaps. But he has like 15 keyboards, all different sizes. He experiments with different what's the QWERTY configurations when you have your buttons don't match what the normal thing is. All his keyboards don't have legends on them, which means they don't have the actual names of the keys on them, so he can switch them around. It's awful. Like, I tried to log into his computer, and I'm like, where the heck's A? Oh, it's up here. Why is it there? Well, we're not born in Russia. A is here. You know, it's your pinky.
One day we need to do a video just on Gavin.
He's a conundrum. He's one of my best friends. He's a really good dude. So he's either going to be homeless or president, and then there's no in between.
No in between. All right, so the last question I have is your cable. Your cable runs in there.
Oh, yeah.
The ones that are on your ceiling, are you running those? How are you running those? Are you running them out of the booth, or how are those run?
So I want to keep as many holes in the booth where sound can leak out to a minimum, right? And so I want everything to stay inside the booth as much as we can. Think of it kind of like building an aquarium, right? If you have a bunch of holes in it, then water's going to leak out and you're going to have a big old mess. So that's kind of how we're treating it with sound. You want to have the least amount of areas where sound can leak out as possible, right? So on the overhead bar, where the lights and the overheads are, the mic cables are zip tied to the little arms they're on, and then they are all zip tied to the accessory bar along the top. So we bought those self-adhesive little zip tie clamps. You stick them to the metal accessory bar, and then all the mic cables are zip tied to it. Usually, I am a anti-zip tie guy. You know, I'm good with Velcro. Velcro is totally cool. But if I have to get out my wire cutters just to move a cable, I might stab you with those wire cutters. And so with the exception though, these ones will never move. Once we got the placement, besides the, you know, little bit of adjustment here and there, we're not going to be taking those mics down and moving them all around all that much, so they could stay zip tied. So they stay zip tied all the way across the accessory bar, and then they're zip tied against the wall all the way down, and then they're cornered, you know, against the back of the wall, dressed nicely behind the rack, and then up into the DT168.
Excellent. I think that answers all my questions for this week, but we have a comment section down below, right down there, if you have any questions. And we would love to interact with you. We'd love to get a chance to kind of tell you what we're doing, how we're doing it, and just be able to kind of share some of our knowledge with you. So don't hesitate to put comments down in the section, questions down in the section. We really do want to interact with you. If you've enjoyed this video or any of our other videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. That does help out a lot. As you hear from everybody on YouTube, it really does help out. So we would greatly appreciate it if you would make comments, like, subscribe, and do all the things that YouTube asks you to do.
All right, guys. See you later. Thank you so much. We will see you next month.
Have a great month.